Welcome to another episode of Life and Whiskey. As always, I'm Jordan. Starting to get a little tired. I've shot, this is going to be video number 7 in a row, so I've had a little bit of whiskey, and sorry if the energy level's been decreasing here, but I'll try and keep it up. It's not always easy to do, especially when you're talking by yourself, but we'll see what we can do here. Okay, so this episode we are going to look at classic Jameson whiskey, Irish whiskey. Again, 50 milliliter bottle, and we'll get into that. I haven't even opened it yet, so we'll see where that goes. And here in Wyoming, I was able to pick this 50 milliliters up for $1.79. Again, I did not look at the 750s when I bought it, so I went onto TotalWine.com and I saw that they had a 750 listed for $18.99. So you're going to be in that $15 to like $23 range for a 750 for Jameson. Hopefully not much more than that wherever you are at. It is probably one of the most recognizable Irish whiskeys out there. It's classic, right straight down the middle as far as flavors and profile go when you start talking about Irish whiskey. And yeah, it is an 80 proof, 40% ABV, John Jameson Distillery, and here we go. Now, for a lot of people, myself included, this was the introductory into Irish whiskey, and maybe the only Irish whiskey you are aware of. I did recently do a video looking at Two Gingers, a really nice Irish whiskey, and then now here we are with Jameson. One nice thing that the Jameson Distillery has done is they've expanded their lineup, had a couple of different agings where they used different barrels to age stuff, different casks, so they had some different beer casks that they put the whiskey in to age, and they came up with some interesting things. Off the top of my head, I can't say that I was a huge fan of any of them, even though they sounded pretty good. None of them really turned out that awesome, in my opinion. However, I am more than happy to go back and explore and look at those bottles again, especially now in front of the camera, and actually review them. But from memory, the few times I've had them, I was underwhelmed with them. But who knows? Maybe I just didn't give them a fair shake, or maybe the setting or time of day or how I was feeling at the moment just didn't really hit me so well. So, Irish whiskey. To be Irish whiskey, it has to be made in Ireland. You can have an Irish style whiskey made here in America, but to be actual Irish whiskey, it has to come from Ireland and be imported from Ireland, and Jameson fits the bill. So here we go. On the nose, it is as Irish as Irish gets, and what I mean by that is if you stick your nose into an Irish whiskey, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, which is funny because it also has elements of what I would consider a Canadian whiskey to have. Vanillas, there's a shortbread cookie note in there that's fairly distinct. I've found it in a couple of scotches, but most of the Irish whiskeys that you will have some sort of that note poking through. It's very clean, very light. I would say maybe a bit of honey. It's really hard to get much out of it. It's a pretty light whiskey nose profile. On taste, this is Girl Scout cookie, shortbread cookie all day long. Finish, like, that's the first and middle notes. It's sweet, coupled into like a honey and a vanilla and maybe a hint of caramel. If you want to say there's a touch of oak spice at the end, I guess I could find it, but it's not prominent and most people are not going to pick it out. But I can see it being in there. Just kind of a little tickle on the tongue at the end. A very, very thin flavor profile. It is here, there, and gone very quickly, very watery. It doesn't cling. The only part that's clinging is the finish, and it's a very like the after you swallow it, after like that touch of oak note disappears, several seconds later it's just a dryness on the back of my tongue. It's not a black pepper, it's not an oak, it's not an anything, it's just dry. It dries out my mouth. It's nice, like the whole profile, everything about it is extremely nice. It's just short, simple, and watery. Okay? And second sip, it duplicated that, absolutely step for step. So nothing really major changing. Nothing changed on the nose, the flavor, the profile. Just super simple, nice, and enjoyable, right? So classic Irish whiskey territory here. Kind of a budget Irish whiskey, if you want to say there is such a thing. But you can't go wrong with it. It makes great mixed drinks. And I highly encourage you, if you've never tried it, to go out and at least see if that's something you might be interested in. Go give it a go. If it is, if you have tried it before, I encourage you, try and give yourself a neat pour and really explore it and see what you think about it. Don't just straight up mix it, even if that's your go-to. I think that's something you should do with pretty much any whiskey. Give it a try neat to really explore it. Even if you don't like whiskey necessarily and you just want to mix it into something, you never know what you're going to find, and you'll be surprised what kind of different notes and flavors you'll experience both when you nose it and when you taste it. I highly encourage you to give that a try. So with that, we are going to set the whiskey portion of this video aside, and we'll move into my next bunch of tips. So this is my How to Hunt Elk Revisited, where I'm talking about tips, tricks, and some of the smaller details and things that you may not think about or may not have thought about before, and that other people aren't really telling you about when it comes to hunting and hiking out in the mountains. And so I just got done in the last two videos. We were kind of talking about hiking and just moving through the woods and the mountains, and some things you want to consider while you're doing that to stay safe and conserve energy. Now we're going to look at the actual elk hunting portion of stuff. So for the very first thing, I'm going to read this verbatim from my notes and then discuss it further. So I have here, get up early, earlier than all the other hunters. Don't be afraid to hike in the dark. Position yourself to be able to hear elk while it is still dark. If you choose to call, only call a few times to locate and get a bugle or a response. Then stop calling. Move yourself into position to start hunting right at daybreak, and only work to call in an animal after shooting hours are open or immediately before, so that you can take advantage of shooting light. Hopefully you camped in an area, so this is if you're doing a backpack camp. Hopefully you camped in an area that is not being utilized heavily by the elk during the night hours, and you will have half a mile to a mile to hike in the dark to get into a good position to hunt. Okay, so what all of that means is most people, in my experience, are getting up. Let me just put you into where I hunt. So I hunt, down along the Wyoming, Colorado border, right? So fairly far south. And light on opening weekend is like 6:05 or 6:10. That's the half hour before sunset, or before sunrise, is 6:05. So the first light on the horizon, 6:05, 6:10, something like that. I personally get up at 4:30 in the morning. I eat, I get dressed, I eat, I drink my emergency, and I start hiking before 5 or at 5 o'clock. So, it takes a half hour for me to get ready, get all my stuff together, blah, 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 start moving. And then I hike for an hour in the dark. And I kind of have a little area figured out that if I hike in an hour in the dark, I can kind of get to a position where for the last 3 years now, I've been able to hear elk calling back and forth from that location without ever having to make a sound myself. So I can get into position, I can rest, relax, whatever. Often I'll go, go to the bathroom and whatever else while I'm there, because nothing like a mile hike or so to kind of get things moving in the morning, if you know what I mean. So I do that while it's still dark. Get ready so that when I hear that first elk, I can start making a play on them and figuring out where they're going and how to get in position to take advantage of the thermals or the winds that are occurring at that time and what I expect them to be in the near future, right? So the wind shift, the thermal shift, I should say, occurs from downslope to upslope somewhere around 9:30, 10 o'clock, where I hunt most of the time, if there isn't a wind from a different direction or something changing that. And that thermal shift, mind you, I've had it in the 50s and 60s, maybe as low as the mid 40s for starting temperatures in the dark, and then by 10 o'clock, upper 70s, and by noon in the 90s. That's kind of the temperature regime that I've worked in the last couple of years. So, I don't make any sounds. I don't give away my position. I just wait for the animals to naturally do something. If I get to my position and I do not hear them make any noise, that is when I will send out a locate bugle or two and just see if I can get a response. If I cannot, I will start working my way towards areas that I suspect are their bedding areas. Now, in this little area I've been hunting the last 2 years, I kind of know where water is, or I should say, I know where the water is, I know where the food is, and I know where they're bedding. So I kind of have a semblance of an idea of where to expect the animals to be. Now, this year my plan is to go out and explore some new areas. So, I've done my computer work and whatnot, trying to figure out where I think animals may be, just based on terrain and features and whatever else. But I won't know. So I'll be in the same boat as somebody who's never hunted an area before, or who's never even hunted before. I'm starting from scratch, essentially. And so that's the method that I do. So if you're backpack hunting, where you're sleeping out in the wilderness and not at a base camp, if you are on animals at dark the night before, make sure you back off and you transition somewhere, a half a mile or so away from that location where you got on those animals. Because if you got on the animals there, that means that's an area that they are utilizing with some sort of consistency. And therefore, if you put your camp down there, you're going to stink up that whole area. And if there's a wind shift in the night, say you're on the downslope, but the wind shifts and a storm blows in or something, and now all of a sudden the wind's blowing uphill all night long. If the elk are above you, they're going to blow out of there. They'll know you're there. They can smell you from a mile away, depending on conditions and everything, So you just want to give yourself some wiggle room, give yourself some topography. Like if you're on this side of a ridge, if there's a ridge here and you're on this side, go work yourself around to this side of the ridge into the other bowl. Hopefully it's not that far away and you can get up. Get up early enough that you can hike back over to here and sit there and wait and listen and see how things develop. But I would recommend against just walking and calling constantly to move through the woods in the dark. Because if you're an hour from shooting light and you're calling and all of a sudden an animal lights up right next to you, there's nothing you can do about it. Or if you accidentally make the wrong call or something like that and you're bringing animals to you, again, what are you going to do at that point? But having said all of that, I like to go in silent and just wait and listen and see what the world does around me naturally. You can, right out of camp, let out a locate bugle or a cow call or something to see if you can get a response, especially if you were not on elk the night before, to see if you can get a response so that you have a definitive direction to start heading. Okay? But I wouldn't go past 1 or 2 calls at the most. If you give out 2 locate bugles and you don't get a response, I would be quiet and move off and just, use your best guess as a direction to go and push on another half mile or so before making another call. Because again, the last thing you want to do is end up calling animals to your position and not being able to make a play on them because you still got an hour before the sun comes up. Okay? So there's my 2 cents on all that. Number 2, don't act like an encounter is over until you know it's actually over. Often satellite bulls and other elk will remain in the area even after one animal spooks. And even if one does spook, if it didn't smell you, it either saw you or just flat out thought something wasn't quite right. Chances are that it didn't blow out completely and it only went 50 to 100 yards, or if you had drawn that animal in from a herd, it just went back to the herd. Okay? Now, when I say don't go until you know it's over, you'll know it's over because you'll hear if it's a bull and cows, you will hear the bull do a roundup bugle and boom, you'll hear hoof beats and they're gone. 2, you can hear cows and the stress in their voice and the sounds that they make. It'll become higher, more rapid, and more like demanding, like, hey, 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 they're talking to their calves, they're talking to the other cows in the group. They're like, hey, let's get out of here, let's get out of here, let's get out of here. And finally, keep your ears open. You'll hear the hoof beats on the ground. It sounds like a herd of cattle pushing through the back pasture when they're on the move, right? They make no bones about getting out of an area. Sticks break, branches break, rocks roll. They're jumping on the ground, whatever. Like, you will hear them leaving an area. They're not quiet and delicate creatures. They are getting the heck out of Dodge, right? So unless that is the case, it is worth your effort, even if an animal blows out, to spend an extra 5 or 10 minutes being vigilant in that area. Maybe you might want to move and circle 50 yards, 100 yards off to the side as quietly as possible and call from a different position. Or send, if you're in a group, send a guy a little bit further head towards the way the elk went. Whatever it is, you might want to just stick and move and try something a little bit different and not give up right then and there. Or if you're fairly confident that that animal only went 100 yards or so, give it 5 or 10 minutes. Let things settle down and relax. Then make your play, move, shift, and call again. Okay? I've made the mistake for the 5 years before I got my first animal of thinking that things were done because that animal blew up and he caught me off surprise and, or off guard by surprise, and all of a sudden there's an elk staring at me right there and I'm caught with my pants down and there's nothing I can do, and then he takes off and runs off. I'm like, oh crap, son of a gun, that was my chance, blah blah blah, and you get in your head and you get all worried about it, and then you just say, that's it, the hunt's over, and you start trotting, plodding along, not really giving a crap about anything and not paying attention. And then 50 yards up the trail, all of a sudden, there's a cow, and there's a cow, and there's a calf, and there's a this, and all of a sudden you find yourself right in the middle of the herd because the rest of the animals didn't take off. So, something to think about. Do not think it's over until you know it's over. So, that's some of the best advice I can give you is don't give up on it. And unless you really, really spook the herd, don't start thinking that they are in the next basin either. They may have only gone 200, 300, 400 yards. Again, get the wind in your favor, make a play on them, and you can dog them 100 yards off and follow them into their bedding area still. Just because they blew out and they're way in front of you, I've found oftentimes if they blow out within 20 minutes, especially if you move from the position that you blew them out of, you can send out a locate bugle and get a response. And all you need is that response to make a play, right? So once you have that response, you figure out, okay, I think they're going to go here. if I just work this position and I work the wind, I can get back in on them again, you know. And maybe it's 3 or 4 hours later when you can get in on them, but as long as you know where they're at or where they're headed, you can just let the world develop however it's going to do. The wind, you know, wait for that thermal shift, wait for the storm front to push in, whatever it is. All you got to do is wait and be patient and get into position where you can make an attack on their position. So think about that. Number 3. Oh man, so this one's going to be a little bit long. I got 3 and 4, so I got 2 more items to discuss. This next one's going to be a little bit long. Again, I'm going to read this for verbatim here. Sounds dumb, but stop and eat lunch. Okay? Make sure you take a break, relax, take your boots off, dry out your socks and your boots, and drink some water. You can also do this after you shoot an elk before you start field dressing it, and you can get and if you can get into the shade. If elk have gone to bed mid-morning and they're not, you know they're not going to move, especially in hot weather, until maybe the last hour of the day. Yes, you might catch a bull trying to slip into a watering hole or something midday, but chances are, if you really take and tear apart where they are bedded, you will figure out a way to sneak in close enough within 100 yards or so and call a bull to you from their bedding area. So what all that means, I know that maybe doesn't make sense, is that you're burning calories at a very high rate while you are out hiking around. Okay, especially if you're coming from a lower elevation and you're not accustomed to being in the mountains. You may burn through 5,000 to 7,000 calories without even thinking about it, especially in steep terrain. You need all the calories you can possibly get. Now is not the time to start a diet program and think you're going to cut weight while you're in the mountains. You should have done that beforehand. Now's the time to just stuff your face with sugar, simple sugars, good carbohydrates, proteins, and anything else that's going to give you food and, give you calories, energy, and recovery, right? Vitamins and recovery. So as a point, make it a point to stop, take a break, let your body relax for a little while, get out of the heat, get into the shade. You know the elk just bedded down 300 yards downrange, upslope from you or whatever. Let them do their thing. You also take time for yourself and do your thing. They're not going anywhere. Unless somebody else is in there blowing them up, they're not going to move. Don't worry about it. So take your boots off, dry your socks out, switch out socks, eat some jerky, eat some nuts, eat some trail mix, whatever it is you're doing, get some food in you. Drink as much water as you can consume at this point, right? You're down. You got downtime. Get it in you. Relax. Go to the bathroom if you have to. Do whatever. Take at least a half hour and concentrate on taking care of yourself. Okay? Then, once you've done all that stuff, now you're a little bit recharged. If you need to, take a nap, right? Say you lost the bugle and you can't get back on those animals or whatever. Take a nap. Sit in the shade. If you're tired, if you've exhausted from 4 days of hard hunting, whatever, it's not killing you. It's not even hurting your hunting opportunities to curl up in the shade for a half hour, an hour, and take a nap, especially in 80, 90 degree heat. It's going to take it out of you, so don't feel ashamed if you need to take a nap. Go ahead and do it. Again, the animals aren't going anywhere. So if you don't know where they are, you're just going to be wasting energy walking around guessing where they're at, and oftentimes you will end up bumping them before you get an opportunity to make a play on them. So that may not be your best choice, right? And if you do know where they are, they're not going anywhere. So just play it cool, relax, take some time, right? So slow things down. That's the main point of that. And my final point, something I need to work on personally even more. I don't do it enough. but it never played a role in the previous hunting in the Midwest that I had done, so it's not a habit I'm accustomed to. But use your binos to scan the timber in front of you, 70, 100 yards, whatever, before you just start walking somewhere, okay? I've blown up a lot of elk just because visually without aids looking in front of me, you miss a lot. Whereas if you bring up those binos, you see a leg, an ear, a tine, a whatever, a body, something in front of you. Use that to your advantage. If you're in an area where either you know or suspect there are elk somewhere in the near vicinity, use your glass to make sure that they're not right there. You'd be amazed how often something, bears especially are the notorious ones because they're quiet. Bears are extremely quiet when they move through the timber, and so they'll be there and gone before you even know that they were ever near you. So if you're walking through an area and you see bear shit all over the place and some of it's fresh, chances are you bumped that bear out of there and they're not very far off. So use your binos, not because you should be scared that there's a bear there, because chances are the bear's going to run, but because A, you'd get to see a bear, which is kind of cool, potentially, and B, it just is going to help you be aware of what's going on. So if you suspect animals, elk, bears, whatever it is, are somewhere around you, use your binos to scan the area before just charging in somewhere, okay? And it just helps you pick things apart, slow down the tempo a little bit of how fast you're moving through an area, and it will help you out tremendously. You will start to see way more than you ever thought you would, just by slowing things down. Allow me just a brief second here to read through my next notes for the next one. I just want to make sure I don't double up, and I was about to, so I'm going to leave it there. And I will address the next stuff in the last video of this series, the last video of this reincorporated series here, video number 8. And yeah, so if you have any comments about Jameson, you got something to say, go ahead, throw it down below. Like I said, I did not look at how much a 750 costs locally, so I went on to TotalWines.com. They had a 750 for $18.99. I bought this 50 ml for $1.79. Pretty good little whiskey. If you found some value in this video, please like, subscribe, and share this video. If you didn't, put the thumbs down, comment down below what you didn't like or what could be improved, and let me know what you could find this for, Jameson, anyways, in your area. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys have a great day, and we'll catch you in the next video.